This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
It's 10:06 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. Time now for My Favorite Rabbi.
And this is Rabbi Shafir Loeb of Congregation Eitz, Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast. Welcome to this Friday. Friday that's less than a week away from Hanukkah. Hi, how did it get to be this close?
Well, it's you were talking about Hanukkah, I think, sometime around August, and I don't know, we've lost those 3 months there. It's
it happens very quickly.
Yeah.
It goes very, very quickly. So time is...
Now, for you, this is not a major...
Correct. It's
holiday.
not a major holiday.
High holy.
The major holidays are in fall, in September, October, in that period, and that's Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Other major holidays, in fact, one in the fall is Sukkot, the Festival of Booths, and in the spring there's Passover, Pesach.
But for the kids, this is cool.
For kids, it's a lot of fun. It celebrates. It was a dangerous holiday in the days of Rome because it was all about independence.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah. So it was about kicking the Greeks out of the temple, the Assyrians and the Greeks, their local representatives, if you will, and quote, I would say something like going back to the good old days, and we can argue about whether or not the good old days were ever as good as we think they were.
Yes.
Right, the good old days are right now, folks.
Anywhere. Yeah.
Anywhere, anytime. But it was, and when we look at that, it's a crazy time. Jewish scriptures have actually closed by the time that Hanukkah happened as a holiday.
Oh.
It happens shortly, not long after the books of Esther and Daniel, which are the last two books of scripture that are written. And it's a couple hundred years before Jesus.
So you don't have amendments to the...
Yeah, there's no amendments to it. And in fact, we don't even have the book of Maccabees that talks about the holiday. That's in what you would call the intertestamental books, or the Apocrypha, the hidden ones, the ones that the Catholic Church kept, but that Protestants don't.
Aha.
Right. So there's the books of Maccabees.
Leave it to us Wesley Catholics.
Yes. And so we actually don't have the book in Hebrew. There are no existing books of it in Hebrew, and probably it was written in Aramaic because of the time frame.
So it was never translated to Hebrew?
I'm sure that it has been for kids to study, who speak Hebrew.
Right.
And actually, there was a wonderful scholar, David Flusser, who lived many years ago, who had a way of, he was so multilingual, but one of the things that he did was he would often take scriptures, Greek scriptures, and translate them word for word into Hebrew. And he was able to pick up some idiomatic things so that we know that some books probably were originally written in Hebrew and then translated into Greek, which gives them kind of a strange sound in Greek. But, it's the languages, it has to do with multiple languages, which is interesting because the topic that I was going to talk about today was perspective, and language certainly is tied up in that. One of the things that we now know, for example, is that it is much healthier for a child to speak 2 or more languages.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. It's
very important.
Yeah.
And my nose says that allergies are around.
So, uh-oh.
Yeah. What else is new?
But yeah, that is so true.
Well, it is, because when you speak more than one language, what happens is that you start to realize that you can't translate word for word. And you can prove this to yourself by taking something, translating it into a foreign language, and then taking that foreign language and translate it back to English, and you're not going to get the original phrases back.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you would think that if it was mapped that precisely, and that's the challenge, if you will, in doing a language translation software, is that there's nuance, there's puns, there's slang, figurative language, all of those things that affect. For example, if I was to say Cliff is sharp, what do I mean? Do I mean he's a classy dresser? Do I mean he's smart? Do I mean he's got a sharp tongue? Right. Without context, if I just say,
yeah, there's a million different.
There's a million. Right.
Yeah.
Anybody who does the translation has to pick one of those, because in any other language, there's not all of these different meanings associated with the words that translate sharp.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I get it. But you're right. It's I know, I've told the story before. My wife went to Indiana University's lab school, and by the fourth grade, she was speaking 4 languages. It's like, oh my God.
And she has a much better she has a much better early understanding of perspective, that things are different. So when a Spanish speaker looks at something, they see different things than the English speaker sees, because it's not just about what hits our retinas, it's about what our brain does with it. And when you're multilingual, each of those languages lives in a different part of the brain. It has different dedicated neurons that fire in that language. And they've done a number of tests recently, and when a multilingual person looks at something, they are analyzing it in more than one language.
Yeah, it's so funny. When we were coming back on the bus, and we had it was 13-hour bus ride, the other night, we had Gio, our Italian player, was saying something in Italian, and Michael, our Puerto Rican player, was answering in Spanish. It was great, and they understood each other.
Yeah, the 2 languages are close enough.
Yes, yeah, it was funny. It was
that they get it. The roots are the same.
Sure.
And but they wouldn't necessarily get jokes and puns.
I'll bet. Yeah.
Right, because puns depend greatly. In fact, we just read the portion of the Torah of the book of Genesis that has in it the story of the birth of Esau. And in order to get the meaning, you have to understand that Esau means a hairy guy.
Oh.
Okay, so it's somebody fuzzy, furry.
Okay.
Right, and so what the Hebrew actually says, it's talking about the birth of the twins. Jacob and Esau are born together into Rebekah's, they're fraternal twins, clearly, because one's fuzzy and furry, and so they name him Harry.
Oh, God.
That's the pun in Hebrew. And just as you laugh, that's how Israelis laugh when you read that story, because they still get it.
Okay. Huh.
Even though the word for hairy guy is not used as much now.
Yeah, but
right? Puns are very much time constrained too.
Wow.
Yeah. So that makes me wonder. It's the only pun I can translate. There's a few other puns in Hebrew that I get because of my Hebrew skills, but it makes me wonder how many I don't get, because either the language has changed since the time when it was written down, and so the puns have moved, right? Because very few kids today talk about sleep tight.
Sure, that's
right, and that comes.
That was our parents' generation.
That was right, because a couple hundred years ago, people actually didn't have box springs. They tied a rope around the bed frame, and if you didn't tie it tight, then the mattress, which was not nearly one of these wonderful number beds, did not. It sagged, and you woke up with a backache.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, sleep tight meant something, and don't let the
literally.
Yeah, and so did don't let the bed bugs bite.
Right. Yeah.
Bed bugs would have been much more common.
It depends on the hotels we stay in.
I got you. You need to go to those ones that don't charge by the hour. No comment.
Gosh, did you have a video camera on? No.
So, but bed bugs are that's a problem. How to get rid of them? Because once they move in, they are, as many people are discovering in Florida right now with cockroaches. It's insect infestations are just, that's why they're called infestations, because they're not easy to get rid of. Just like it's not easy to stop the invasion of invasive lizards, trees, pepper trees, etc.
I have to ask you this story, the big story that broke this morning. Is that Mossad had the plans of the Gaza attack a year before the attack. And they said they can never pull this off.
Wow.
They're not smart enough to pull this off. And you know, I shook my head because I was listening on the way in and I'm going, oh my God.
Well, that would be, if so, that would be the height of arrogancy, wouldn't it? And
wow. I mean,
never underestimate your enemy. And Hamas and terrorist organizations are everybody's enemy.
Well, and you look at the way it happened was so low tech, you know, I mean, you think, okay, if you're thinking, what's the stupidest way that something like this could be pulled off?
A bunch of hepped up, high on drugs idiots.
Yeah. On motorbikes, yeah. I mean, you know, come on.
It had, you know, I think about that, and it had to feel very much like a video game. And they probably were trained on video games.
Yeah. I never thought of that. Yeah.
That was when I watched the body cam videos of the foot soldiers that have been captured. That was exactly the feeling I had, was that this was a video game to them. Wow. And you can achieve that attitude in people with training and drugs. And the thing to remember, that the foot soldiers are not in control. They're being controlled. Mm-hmm. And the really horrible, wicked individuals who are responsible for it are not even in the country.
Oh, they're probably sitting in a Paris hotel.
Paris or Beirut or Qatar or somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And they're controlling it purely, you know, the ones that Israel can take out in Gaza are the low-level lieutenants. That's why you don't hear about leaders being captured, because they're not there. They're not there to capture. Mm-hmm. And anybody who does that to their people is beyond despicable. They don't care about them. And that's the hard part, right? It's the lies and the stuff all around on all sides is just incredible. We just watched the movie Golda, and and I don't know if it's true or not, but in the movie it claims that one of the systems that's used to monitor the situation was not, in fact, turned on when the Yom Kippur War happened.
Yeah, I think the government was saying that it was because of the holiday.
No, it wasn't.
I know.
At least not according to the movie.
Yeah.
And you know that goes into you don't stop. Yes, you have minimal folks on duty on a holiday, just as American troops.
Skeleton crew. Yeah.
Skeleton crew. You have the minimum you need, but I think that once you think you have these systems in play, you think that nobody's going to challenge them. And there's no reason for it to have taken as many hours as it did for the Army to get there. The one thing I was thinking and you know, we do it at both campuses that I teach. If security doesn't call in on a set schedule or on a every so often schedule, then you assume there's a problem.
Sure.
There's no way that they could have gone radio silent for that many hours and somebody not to think there was a problem, unless you're not doing what I would call base level security, right? People are supposed to call in, and if they miss a call, you start to get nervous. You become aware, and if they miss the backup, then you become serious. You call them and find out what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And now I'm going to be really, so there needs to be some catchphrase that you use, that you know when you hear it that everything is or isn't okay, right? That's not high-tech security.
No, we see that on NCIS.
Yeah, NCIS, all of the cop shows have it, right?
Yes.
I think Perry Mason had it, but Perry Mason wasn't a cop show. Hawaii Five-0, I think, had stuff like that.
They did. Yes, they did.
This is just not high tech. And I think there's a tendency in current generation to rely too much on their electronics. And all it takes is snipping a wire, and
Oh, yeah.
your electronics are not nearly as valuable. Now, granted, we've got more Bluetooth, but still, there needs to be that kind of base. If you're going to set up, it's like if you're in a gated community and you have different guardhouses into the gated community. If something goes wrong with one of those and they go offline, you need to assume there's been a breach.
Oh, yeah, you bet.
Right? Same thing if you've got house perimeter stuff. You need to assume there's been a breach. And it doesn't matter how big or how small it is. Right? And my dream, and yes, I'm a far left dreamer, for lack of a better word, is that someday there won't be a need for these kinds of walls. But that's because I do believe that inherently most people are good. And I recognize that there are people who don't have consciences, who don't care about others, who are complete emotional opportunists and don't have empathy at all. But we need to start building that into systems. And I was talking with my niece when she was visiting last week, and she was saying that education is the answer, and education is the answer. We need to be working with children to start these systems correctly. And we don't know how much trauma children from quote unquote good homes are traumatized. As my colleague at Kaiser likes to say, life is traumatizing. If you can run this test on dogs and cats, even cats respond. If all you're doing when you're home is on your tablet and on your phone, you're not emotionally available.
Yeah.
Right. And kids and animals need that social interaction. They need to see your eyes. We have something in the body, in the brain, called the fusiform face area. FFA is the abbreviation. Fusiform
Wow,
face area. And it's the part of the brain that takes the input from the retina and says, oh, that's a face.
Okay.
Oh. And when you see a face in something that doesn't have a face, when Mevo sees something that isn't a face, it's doing that kind of analysis. And they can't do this study on humans because we don't raise humans without contact, hopefully. But when they've done it with monkeys, if the baby monkeys don't have access to faces, that part of the brain does not develop properly. So the system is not on board when you're born, but the way to build it is.
Well, and they were talking about this last night on that crazy presidential debate with the governor of California and Florida, about how much COVID has really hurt the students that were locked down.
Yeah. The younger, the worse.
Yeah.
The younger, the worse. And socialization is so important. But parents can do, here's a really easy thing to do with your infant to your young child. Play peekaboo.
Oh, yeah.
Play
We
peekaboo.
used to all the time. Yeah.
It's one of the most important games that parents play with their children. Because a baby, when they don't see the face, don't see you. And so
Yeah,
what you're teaching
makes
them
sense.
is that even if you don't see me, I'm still here, and that I will return. Two very important things. And, you know, and I tell my students about this, but my dogs can tell when I come home, they're all over the place, of course, as dogs are, like, you're home.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. But if I pick up my phone to look at something or answer a phone call as I walk in the door, they are just there. I can see their bodies fall because they're not going to get that initial burst of attention.
You're not paying attention.
You're
to
not
that.
paying. So I actually try not to answer my phone, even if it texts or rings, for the first couple of minutes when I walk in the door.
Wow.
Because I've seen it in my animals. And if my animals do that, how much more so do kids?
Yeah.
There's a reason we're social, and it's to build parts, bits and pieces of our brain. And so for those that were locked down, perhaps with only one human being, and if that human being wasn't emotionally available, they might physically have been in the room, but they weren't interacting with the kid for whatever reasons, and there's 15 million reasons.
Well, they were probably on their screens.
They might have been on their screens. They might have been taking pain pills. I'll say it nicely. They might be asleep. Any number of things could interfere with that connection with the child. And so that child is completely isolated. Plus, everybody during COVID had a heightened emotional response to it. Whether it was a belief that they were going to catch COVID, a fear of who was going to die, or even just what am I going to have to change in my lifestyle because of this? Like that's a stressor too. So there's many levels of stress. We saw a great deal. Right? People are still dealing with not having been as active, not getting out there and walking, not going to the gym, paying a deep price for that. Now, you stayed open and I continued to come to the studio the whole time. And one of the reasons for that was to leave my house.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want the supermarket to be the only outing of the day.
Well, and
of the week.
on the other side of the coin, the late Stuart Address, he was afraid to leave his house.
He cocooned in his house.
And that can't be good for
It's
the
not
body.
good. It's not good. And he put on weight during that period, and he was much less mobile. And yeah, I will say that my husband and I actually walked during that period just to get out of the house and walk around the block.
Yeah, and supposedly COVID doesn't strike outdoors.
Well, it's an interesting substance. It's like the cockroaches. You need more than one. You need more than one bit of the virus to have it have enough of an ability to capture.
Okay, I have to ask you. I'm going
You're going places.
Willy-nilly here. We both got vaccines.
Yeah.
Are you going to get one now?
Yeah.
You are.
Yeah.
We're looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't done it yet.
We haven't either.
I got my flu shot, and I'm going to get the pneumonia shot, and I'm going to get the COVID shot. I think that if you're physically healthy otherwise, that vaccines are just vaccines. If you've got a compromised immune system, then maybe you need to be.
It's a whole different.
You need to talk to your doctor and see what's a good idea or not. And probably I'm probably more resistant to it than many are because I teach, because I come in and I'm sure that some of the kids have some amount of all sorts of different catchable things that I hopefully don't get close enough to actually catch, but that are around on things. And one of the things I don't do, and I didn't do it even before COVID for a different reason, but I don't pass around an attendance sheet in class. A lot of classes will have students sign an attendance sheet, because 40 students to sit there and call off the roll is crazy. It takes too much time. But what I do is I actually have name tents, name cards that the students have in front of their desk. I have all of them. I give them out at the beginning of the class. The students put them up on their desk, and then at the end they're all collected in one pile, and then they go into my container, and I know which ones were collected in the class and which ones weren't.
Interesting. Okay.
And so I can take attendance that way, and it minimizes a whole lot of contact. Even though the pile comes back together, I let it sit out for a little while before I put it away. And just that's not, it's not about COVID. That's just, a way of doing it. The big reason I do that is because it's really hard to read some students' handwriting.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah, and I don't want to guess as to who was there and who wasn't. And I think the temptation to sign for somebody else is much greater when it's a sheet going around. Little more, not that they, and I have caught students sometimes trying to grab an extra name tent and hold it under theirs. And I know it happens some of the time. Sometimes I just make a note of who it is, and I go looking to see what name is next to or in and around them, and see how that person is doing in class. Because one time attendance, or even twice, isn't going to make a huge difference if the person's not there. They're not going to get the learning. They don't realize what they learned from the lecture. I'm sure a lot of students say, "Oh, she's just big and wordy and whatever." That's their loss, because the tidbits are being given. And they're couched in stories so that when you see them on the test or when you need them in the paper, they'll come to mind. It is a psychologist teaching the class.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Very cool.
What can I say?
So have you got some interesting students this semester?
I do. We're almost finished at IRSC. Grades go in this coming week. By the time of my next radio show, the grades will all be posted. They're all due Thursday of next week.
Yeah.
They're all due before I light my Hanukkah lights. That's the game plan. I will have them in on Thursday.
There you go. Well, it's funny, the long bus ride, and Coach, I don't know where we were, someplace in Georgia, and he goes, you got plenty of time to turn this into a homeroom rather than sleep.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get home around 3 a.m., but you're going to be in your 8 a.m. classes. And so it was like, okay. And then you start hearing guys asking kind of like sample test questions, if you will, and of each other. And I thought that was great.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, this is really neat to hear that, at least some of these guys are really taking this thing seriously. And I think we have 3 or 4 A students on.
I wouldn't be
15
surprised.
guys.
Taking advantage of that kind of time is so valuable. It makes me, when you were talking about it, made me think of the Orthodox diamond cutters, because to them the most important thing in life is to study Torah, to study scriptures. And what they do is they have one person who's designated to read the Torah, part of the Torah, to them while they're cutting their diamonds. And so in this room, they'll be working with the cutting wheels and the diamonds. If there's 10 people there, 9 of them will be cutting and 1 will be reading out text and leading the discussion while they cut.
Wow. Huh. I've never heard that.
Yeah. So it's a way of not losing that time.
But you're hearing the scripture.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So There are ways to work if things are important. So let's see. So IRSC is almost winding up. In 2 weeks, Kaiser will be winding up the winter D, and we'll have 3 weeks off. I'll have 3 weeks off from IRSC. Classes start both places on the 8th of January.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's that week of January that everybody has off. And that's because I think Monday's the 1st in January.
Yeah, we've got an unusual basketball game on the 1st. That's never happened in 17 years.
Wow.
But yeah. Well, and the other thing I would imagine is the housing for the students.
Yeah.
Because I remember a few years back, campus police chasing people out, and it's
they
like,
didn't have a place to go.
wait a minute, where are these kids supposed to go if they can't sleep in their bed in the dorms? And that's all changed now. So
they let them stay over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, sure.
Yeah, so Liberty's where I'm taking my master's for the counseling. And it was interesting I'm now into the practicum internship phase of that. And there was a thing about if you need to work between the semesters, between winter to spring, that they've actually got what they call an interim semester, and they keep you enrolled for it to let you get your hours and stuff like that.
Okay. Now, are they, being a 4-year school, are they pretty much on the
They're
same
a full university
as Kaiser?
Okay, so they've got their online and they've got their resident programs.
Oh, okay, and they're different.
And they're pretty much different. I think a resident student can take an online course.
Gotcha.
But the online is pretty much its own world. And pre-COVID, you used to have to go during the course of the masters for 2 1-week intensives. And I just got the news that Sandra O'Connor died.
Oh, yes, that was the lead story in the newscast.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Baruch Dayan, I meant. What was I going to say?
Oh, and Henry.
Oh, that there was an intensive. Yeah, Henry Kissinger last week.
Yeah.
We always lose so many important people. We really do every year.
But you figure 100 years old.
Yeah.
And they had a great interview with him at Fox, and I think he was at the time 95. And he, of course, I've never interviewed him, but I'd seen him interviewed before, and he just said, "Oh yeah, it's a little difficult getting around now, but I'm going to do a stand-up routine in New York." And his sense of humor was great, even until the end.
He had such a dry wit.
Oh yeah, very extremely, yeah.
Yeah, I always admire that in people, even if I'm the target.
Well, and I'm always the target, but I love it. I think it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned two mammoth individuals that had a lot to do with the shaping of what we are now.
Well, and I think it's important to remember that these are important people, and that you hope that they have good information and calm hearts and minds when they make their decisions. We make much better decisions when we're not emotional, but emotion often is where decisions are made. It's why cars
probably shouldn't be, but yeah, you're right.
So look at cars. I mean, that's why we have red and green and yellow and blue ones, because emotions play.
Okay.
Otherwise, they'd be white in the south and black in the north.
Yeah.
Because that would be the most intelligent.
Well, and what? Henry Ford, they were all black.
Yeah, any color as long as it's black, which he actually picked because that was the fastest drying paint. They tested many different things, and he was so much into what we would call push through, right? How what the throughput is, that he wanted the fastest drying paint so they could get off the factory grounds and moving.
That's funny. I never heard that.
Yeah, it was the fastest drying paint rather.
Mm-hmm.
So there's often interesting side reasons that things are done. And as I was starting to mention before, there's 2 weeks that before COVID you used to have to go to campus, but now they're done online, or you can go to campus now.
Okay, interesting.
I'm finishing up. I have my last class this Sunday, for one of those intensives.
Okay. Wow.
So they're offered both in a week, a class per week for the hours, or an online intensive where you go 8 hours a day for however many days. Yeah, and either way, I don't have it in my schedule to take a week off.
Well, I was gonna say, wait a minute.
No, that doesn't fit in my schedule. And yeah.
Wow. 8 hours.
Is tis.
8 hours of psych, that would drive me nuts. I'm sorry. I know that's your field, but oh my goodness.
Well, you realize that it's not 8 hours of lecture.
No, I get it. But
you practice, and people watch others practice, and you get to play this is true on the TV, on the online classes as well, is that some people are observing, some people are being the clients, and others are being the clinician.
Oh, I get it. Okay.
So there's that kind of
like office hours.
Yeah. Everybody gets to practice the different skills, and it's beautifully done. A lot of people complain. There's a book that we use written by a gentleman named Allender, and there's a journal that you write, and it asks you a lot of questions that I think some people may have some challenges with, to deal with family pain. Who did you lose, and what did it cause, and stuff like that. And so we're really being clients when we're in those questions.
Interesting. Huh.
And people really do become very bonded with their subgroups. So we're divided up into an A group and a B group. And when the A group is doing group therapy, this is group therapy training. So there's 2 leaders, and the others in A are the group, and it alternates till everybody in the group has a chance to be the group leader. And B is observing, and so they make their observation comments, and then we come back together and we debrief. Everybody watches everything, and yeah, it's just kind of interesting.
It's fascinating, huh?
It absolutely is. So, and the groups really bond, and I know that I'm still talking outside of class with some of the students that were in my group, because we learn about each other, and we form friendships. These will be professional friendships down the road.
Nice. Yeah.
But it definitely happens. And in fact, I was talking about a similar phenomena with my colleague at Kaiser, that the students that go through, because Kaiser is so much smaller for class size, we talk about the students as being a cohort, because they tend to, the ones that enter in one group go through
together,
the classes
sure.
together, and so they're a cohort. And she was remarking that she had become aware that they have a separate little chat group among themselves, and I said that was great, and that it doesn't surprise me, because I've seen that when it works right, it works that way in other.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Huh.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing. It helps the students. They take care of each other, and if somebody's sick, if it's real or not, because they share that with their cohort.
Mm-hmm.
They may not share it with you, but.
Well, I like the intimate nature of what you deal with at Kaiser. I had friends that went to UCLA that would have, the freshman English.
1,200 students.
Poly Pavilion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I look at some of the introductory classes at Harvard and MIT that they put online, and yeah, they're in these big theaters, and
I'll bet. You sure?
the professor doesn't know you unless you're one of the ones who monopolizes a conversation, in which case you're a pain, a thorn in their side.
Well, and now, I was reading something about UCLA. They now are watching monitors, and the instructors in the monitors are TAs, teaching assistants. They're not the profs.
Mhm.
Profs won't even be seen until near the end of the course.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't like that. I mean, I'm sorry. It's if you're paying that much for tuition, you don't pay for a TA.
The introductory courses, though, I mean, I get that.
Do you really?
I do.
Okay.
And obviously I teach a great number of introductory courses. That's the difference between a research university and a teaching.
Oh.
Right. In a teaching environment like Kaiser or IRSC, the professor does all of the teaching, even at the introductory levels. And yes, it's different.
I like that.
It is. But when you get to, the TAs are usually high-level grad students. So they're actually, if you will, professors in training.
Okay.
They're almost at the PhD. They just simply haven't finished their doctorate, their dissertations. They're not.
Oh, okay.
They're not just seniors. That's part of the reason why teaching schools, why IRSC doesn't have TAs, because you don't get a TA until they're working on their graduate projects.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah. Now, saying that, I was a TA when I was in undergrad, but all I was allowed to do was to grade papers, which, that's a big help. I'd love a TA to help grade papers. Having just finished grading, my students now have to put their pieces together with the feedback.
Oh. Wait a minute. They grade you?
No, well, they actually do, because they do the surveys at the end.
Really?
But but no, I'm doing the term paper differently for the IRSC students this year. What I did was I did 4 parts. I broke it down, and they do part 1 and get feedback on it. They do, and they can redo it. They get part 2, they get feedback on it. They can redo it. Same with 3 and 4. And then part 5 is to take all of those pieces, put it together in one huge paper, and then have something worthy to show when you're applying to grad school, when you're applying for work somewhere, to show that you can write. And you also learn, the students also learn, that you can take this huge 2,200 word paper. It's not that big, but it's big for undergrad, by doing it in bits and pieces and then putting it together.
Wow. Okay.
So the levels of teaching involved in this project. It took me a while to come up with this idea, because it teaches so many different things at so many different levels. But I have to tell you, I a student this morning, could you tell me how I'm not understanding APA 7? And I'm like, how long have we been in class? Ask me the week before everything's due, because now you've noticed that all of your papers say APA errors.
Oh no.
And it's not, I mean, both IRSC and Kaiser have links and have experts in the library to help you. Now, they won't do your work for you, but they'll say you need to look at this and go look at that guideline, and this is wrong. They'll tell you what's wrong. So there's no reason, they won't tell you how to do it. They might show you one, make you fix the others, but yeah, or they'll show you how to find it, how to get the generator. And I even include that for any students listening in on the Start Here tab. There's a big chunk that says APA, and it's got great stuff on everything you need to know. There is no reason to not do well with APA. And libraries in both places, as I said, if you can't do it at 11 o'clock on the day that it's due and expect the library to get it back to you in 10 minutes.
Right.
Although they're pretty quick, actually, but you can't rely on that.
Don't tell
That's not the hours that they're mandated to be watching their emails.
When do I have to get this project in? Oh, yeah, I still have 9 hours left.
Well, yeah. When I was working on my PhD, I came across a meme that said, "Oh, if I only had one more day before I had to turn this in," and then the next screen on it says, "I'd have one more day to party."
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Priorities.
And
we need that. One of the things when I get into what I would call heavy grading or heavy writing mode for a paper is to remember to get up every hour and a half to 2 hours and, let the dogs out, walk, get a drink of water, all those things. You go to the bathroom. Sometimes I have to remind myself of that. And that's just because I get that intense. Right. So it is important, and kids tend to underestimate that. You think you can just plow through and do something. It's not healthy. A good chunk of the weight I'm carrying is from the years that I did that. And now I'm trying to lose it, so I'm trying to be very mindful and not fall into those habits. So I've got 2 more weeks at Liberty, 2 more weeks at Kaiser, and 1 more week at IRSC. And at the University of the People, I've got another 5 weeks of teaching. Because why not?
Wait a minute. You have never brought that up.
I know. It's just an online
Another project.
It's small.
Yet another
It's
project
small.
for the rabbi.
Yeah, it's small.
Gosh. Oh.
So, yeah. My practicum, my official practicum starts January 8th, and my Florida internship is 2 months in.
Nice.
Yeah. Not that I'm keeping track of when that's going to end or anything.
Now, do you actually see clients?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yep. If somebody is interested in having me as their counselor, I am licensed in the state of Florida to do that. Do it in Florida. I'll even do telehealth, and we can do Cigna and Aetna or private pay, and I do a sliding scale. So absolutely. So yeah, if there's anybody out there who would like to to talk to me about something like that, obviously I can't do that with my students, and I can't. Yeah, so I have to be very careful of how and where. So
nice.
But all of the standard counselor client confidentiality works. I promise I won't bring you out onto the radio show.
Yeah.
That would be a serious violation. I would lose my license over that. But yeah, no, I've actually seen a number of clients already.
So now where is the office located?
Well, it depends if it's telehealth. Starting in January, I will be seeing some people over at Change of Mind in Port St. Lucie West.
Oh, okay.
So.
Okay. Yeah. Very cool. But it's funny you mentioned telehealth.
More and more is going to telehealth.
Yeah, we were on the Harbor Place show talking to one of the doctors, and he said the one plus of COVID
is telehealth.
Telemedicine. He just said.
Telemedicine took a big jump forward.
Yes, it did.
It did. And so coming down the road, coming to 2024 next year, summer of next year, the compact should go into effect, which allows counselors to do telehealth across state lines. But it has to be a compact state, and there's some details in that.
Wait a minute.
We're making
can't counsel somebody in California?
I cannot counsel somebody in California right now.
Wow.
No. The licenses are
Why?
not, because counseling licenses are not yet portable.
Oh,
That's what the compact is aiming at changing.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Come on.
And because other than that, what some of the people who do multiple states have done, if they have to get a license in each of those states, you have to have enough clients to make it worthwhile doing that.
Okay.
Or you become a federal counselor, in which case they handle getting those licenses for you. But you still have to do all the testing and the qualifying. And
Sure.
Yeah.
How many years is that?
Yeah, so it's not like a doctor has a United States license,
Oh, I would hope so.
right? And even lawyers can practice outside their state, but not counselors at this time. That's I think it has to do with not looking at mental health in the same way that people have looked at at physiological health. But mental health it's biological and behavioral. It's both. There can be things that are wired differently in your brain, and we look at a lot of those things. And yes, you can control some of that wiring, but some of it you need help, and some of it you can't. Like if you can't recognize faces, that'll probably never come back. Probably. There are people who cannot recognize faces. They cannot even recognize their loved ones. They know it's a face. They just can't make out the individual details.
You're
And
talking like Alzheimer's?
No,
patients and stuff?
there's a name for it. Proprognosia.
Oh,
So there's a term for it. There are people who you can tell the kids, they wait to see which adults wave at them to tell them to come, or they learn to recognize other things about the person in order to recognize them. But they're not good at identifying facial features, at seeing the differences between noses and eyes and mouths.
I've never heard of that.
And
Wow.
well, here's the other piece to that. Most whites have trouble seeing different features on blacks or Asians. Many blacks have trouble seeing different features on whites and Asians. It has to do with who you're used to seeing. You learn to identify the features more closely, more accurately. There was actually a ring operating in California of black youths who used to go into Chinatown and take purses off of older women because the older women couldn't identify which black person did what. So their mask was their skin color.
Wow.
And so there've been things like that we've slowly learned about it, but you learn some of those things through brain damage. As I said, there are things that are hard to build after a child and things that are almost impossible, or perhaps even impossible. So yeah, a lot that we're learning. We're learning a lot more. Thank you to MRIs. Thank you to people who have brain disorders where a lot of studying goes on. A lot still to learn about how this white and gray matter works between our ears. Take care of it, folks, because you don't have an unlimited supply of it. And building pathways is so important. Have a wonderful year. And by the time I see folks next week, it'll be Hanukkah. So if you celebrate Hanukkah, may your candle lighting go well for you. Happy Hanukkah. Chappy Chanukah. This is Rabbi Shafir Loeb for Congregation Eitz Chayim on the Treasure Coast, your Jewish home.
You've been listening to Ask a Rabbi right here on WPSL, Port St. Lucie. Talk to the Treasure Coast, webcaster to the world. Happy Hanukkah.